One more time. One more time. I set that up. That's the queen of the Elvis house there. All right. I hope everybody is doing great today. Hope y'all having a good week and everything. And we getting ready for the last day. Get ready to head back out on the streets, knocking doors, and just having prayer with people. As I said, we went out, knocked doors Monday. We went out and knocked doors Tuesday. And believe it or not, this idea that knocking doors is old and you can't do that, and that is not true. I think that's just an excuse sometimes because we just lazy and we don't want to get out there and do it. And we poke fun at the Jehovah's Witnesses, which I don't know why, because they're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing anyway. But we've had so many good responses to us knocking doors with people. And we haven't been pushy. All we've been doing is trying to pray with people. We've had people shut the door in our face now. We had two people who were very, very ugly that shut the door in our face. But that's fine, that ain't nothing like being hung on the cross. But we've been having good responses. And I'm going to do a video after today. I'm going to do a video specifically on our prayer walk, just to look at the results of the prayer walk and the experiences that we had in talking with people. But a lot of people don't turn down prayer, A lot of people want to be prayed for. But I want to talk this morning about responding to our enemies. We as human beings, especially those of us who follow God, religious people, we can easily point out all of the big sins. We can easily point out, especially the sins that we're not involved in. If someone is practicing a sin or someone is involved in a sin that does not affect our lives or we don't have a problem with, man, we can point that out very quickly. And we will not only point it out, but we'll be quick to talk about it. And even if we're doing it in a nice way, we're quick to talk about it and show how it's wrong. Some things come to mind, such as homosexuality, unfaithfulness, murder, what we call big sins. And we even are quick to point out when our enemies do something toward us. Even if we've done the same thing toward somebody else in the past, we kind of overlook that. But when the same thing is done to us by our enemies or by somebody who may not like us, we're quick to point out and talk about it and, be pretty disgusted about it. Because it falls in the category of one of those big sins. You don't do that to me. You don't mess with me. You don't cross me. You don't stab me in the back. To me, that's a big sin. But I think if we want to label things as big sins, I think another one of the big sins that we can talk about is how we treat our enemies. We're not going to miss heaven because of how our enemies treated us. We're not going to miss heaven because somebody stabbed us in the back. We're not going to miss heaven because somebody lied on us. We're not going to miss heaven because somebody spread a rumor about us. We're not going to miss heaven because somebody died. We're not going to miss heaven because of how people treat us. We're going to miss heaven because of how we treat our enemies. We're going to miss heaven because of how we responded to our enemies. It's all about us. It's all about our response to our enemies. That's what's going to determine whether or not we go to heaven. And I don't know if we stop a lot of time and realize that. I don't know. I don't know if we think that just because we're religious, that God somehow excuses us for a minute when we get angry and allows us to just react to people any kind of way just because we're angry, and he's okay with that. He's not okay with that. Jesus gives us guidelines on what to do when it comes to our enemies. He gives us guidelines on how to respond to people who dog us out, who misuse us, who persecute us. He gives us guidelines. And those guidelines are found in several chapters, but specifically in Matthew chapter 5, verse number 43, and the following verses. And listen to exactly what they said. Matthew 5, verse 43, Jesus says, you heard it was said, you shall love your neighbor, hate your enemy. Jesus says, that's what you heard. Love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Hey, baby. My daughter's standing at the door. In the next verse, he says, but I say to you, love your enemies and bless those who curse you. You want to come on live video with me? You can come over here, Bobby. You can help me interpret some of these verses. This is one of my babies here. But Jesus says, but I say unto you, love your enemies and bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you and pray for those who spitefully use you. Now listen at what he's saying here. 3 things he says to do to people who your enemies. Number 1, he says love your enemies and do what?
Bless them.
Oh my goodness. Let me just read. Bless those who curse you. Now let's stop for a minute. Someone who curses you, he says, bless those. Those are opposites. Those are opposites. Polar opposites. Bless, curse. Bless, curse. Jesus says if someone curse you, you bless them. Curse you, you bless them. He didn't say if someone curses you, you curse them. Someone talks about you, you talk about them. No, he says if someone curses you, you bless them. Someone talks about you, you bless them. Someone stabs you in the back, you bless them. Our response as Christians should be opposite from our enemies. It's what sets us apart from them. It's what sets us apart. Number 2, he says, do good to those who what?
Hate you.
Hate you. Do good to those who hate you. Polar opposites. Someone hates you, do good to them. Someone hates you, do good to them. You see? We got a negative, and our response should be the response of a positive. Someone hates you, do good to them. And then he says, those who spitefully use you and persecute you, he says, do what? Pray for them. A person who is trying to use you, misuse you, and persecute you, Jesus says, don't turn around and persecute them. Don't turn around and misuse them. Pray for them. Now, he is not saying continue to let people use you. You don't have to let people use you, but at the same time, you don't have to respond to them the way they respond to you. You see, the true test of whether or not we're trying to live right is not whether or not we're homosexuals or whether or not we're cheating or whether or not we're stealing or killing. The true test is how we interact with people. Because it's easy not to worry about all of these, quote, big sins. But do we know how to interact with our enemies? Jesus says in the same chapter, in chapter 5, in verse number 46, he says, for what reward do you have if you're able to love those who love you, if you're able to agree with those who agree with you, if you're able to be a positive to those who, be positive to those who are positive? He said, what reward you have? Even the tax collectors do the same thing. For if you love those who love you, what reward you have? It's easy to love and respond in a positive way to people who love and respond to us in a positive way. But that doesn't determine whether or not we're really trying to follow God. What determines if we're really trying to follow God is, can we respond to our enemies the same way we respond to our friends? Can we respond to our enemies the same way we respond to people who love us? Can we respond to those who disrespect us the same way we respond to those who respect us? Can we respond to those who stab us in the back the same way we respond to those who don't stab us in the back? Jesus says, if you're going to be a child of God, you must do that. Hey, Will, good to see you, man. In the last verse of that chapter, he says, therefore you shall be perfect just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Meaning this right here. If we are going to be complete in our Christianity, then just like our Father in heaven is complete, then we must respond to our enemies in a positive way. Positive way. We've got to stop letting our emotions overtake us and allow our emotions to make us act in ways that are contrary to the way God wants us to act. Don't be like the young rich ruler in Matthew chapter 19. The young rich ruler came to Jesus and said, I've done all these commandments since I was a young child. Do I lack anything? And Jesus says, go sell all you had. And the Bible says he went away sad. The young rich ruler, the young boy, he had done everything God told him to do, but he couldn't get rid of the riches. We don't need to be like that. We don't need to see God. We don't need to be judged. And we say, Lord, I did everything you told me to do. I wasn't this and I wasn't that and I wasn't this and I wasn't that. And then the Lord look at us and say, yes, but do you remember how you treated your enemy? Do you remember how you treated the person who lied on you? Do you remember how you treated the person who stabbed you in the back? Do you remember how you treated the person who misused you and persecuted you? Do you remember how you treated them? Oh, yes. And that's why you're going to miss heaven. We don't want the Lord to say that to us. So we all, including myself, need to think before we speak, think before we act. And James tells us that, be swift to hear, slow to speak. We think about these things because our response to our enemies should always be positive. Once again, bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who spitefully use and persecute you. Matthew 5, verse 43 through 48. That's how we treat our enemies. No excuses. And God does not give us leeway to treat our enemies bad just because they treat us bad. Remember, God said, vengeance is mine. I will repay. And I want to close with this verse here too, because there may be times when someone does us wrong, we may be wishing that something happens to them, something bad, or we may be wishing that God will do something to them. In Proverbs chapter 24 and verse number 17, I want to read this to you. I was reading through Proverbs one time and I saw this verse, and I mean, it almost sent me backwards because I know several occasions something that happened to me. In my mind, I was like, Lord, I just wish something would happen. We've all been there. And so in Proverbs chapter 24, verse number 17, Solomon said, do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles. The Lord says, not only should we be positive toward our enemies, if something happens to them, we should not rejoice if something happens to our enemy. We should never rejoice when something happens to our enemies. Not only should we treat them good, but we should not be happy. We should be praying for the safety of our enemies. We should be praying that God blesses our enemies and bring our enemies around. When our enemies are sick, we should be praying for their health, that they get well. That's how we should respond. And if we don't respond like that, if we don't respond in a positive way, the next verse, Solomon says in verse 20, Proverbs 24:20, for there would be no prospect for the evil man. Hold up. I'm sorry, verse 18. Unless if you rejoice when something happens to your enemy, the next verse says, lest the Lord see you rejoice and it displease him, and he take away his wrath from him. The Lord, when our enemies are hurt or something bad happens to our enemies, God said, don't you rejoice, because if you rejoice when something bad happens to your enemy, then I'm going to turn. First of all, I'm going to be displeased with you, and I'm going to take all my wrath away. Okay. So, as children of God, y'all, we got to be positive toward people who hate us. We don't have to let people use us, but we also don't have to respond in a hateful way, in a mean way, in a derogatory way toward them just because they're doing it. That's not what we do as children of God. We're supposed to be a light of this world that shines at all time, even on our enemies. And the reason we do that, Matthew 5, verse 16, is so that God can be glorified and people can see him in us. And we can't take vacations from that either. And so I hope that we will meditate on that and think about that, and let that motivate us to really, really focus in on treating our enemies good and being kind toward our enemies no matter how they treat us. I'll be the first to say this, that it's hard. It's hard, but it's necessary, and we must do it. Your grandmama said, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey Joe, good to see you, man. So let's just, think about that a little bit, and hey, God never said this life's supposed to be easy. A statement that I've heard before, I ain't letting nobody run over me. I hear this all the time from teenagers. I ain't letting nobody run over me, and we say all the time, I ain't letting nobody run over me. When your enemy does you a certain kind of way, and you treat them nice, and you're kind toward them no matter how they do to you, it's not you're letting people run over you. You're simply letting God work through you. There's a difference in letting someone run over you and letting God work through you. Just because you treat your enemy kind, you're not letting no one run over you. You're showing them that I'm stronger than you. You're showing them that I'm different. And, two wrongs don't make a right. So we have to be mindful of that. Don't ever let anybody be, like I said yesterday, your puppet master, to where they can treat you a certain kind of way, pull your strings, and then get you to act in all kind of way. And they're pulling your strings like a puppet master. So they talk about you, and as soon as they start talking about you pulling your strings, you start acting the way they want you to act because they're your puppet master. And they know that they're your puppet master, and that's why they do you the way they do you, because they know they can make you respond how they want you to respond. And you know what? When we act the way they want us to act, then you know what we tell them? Like that song I played yesterday, I'm your puppet. Come on, Lex. Come on, girl. Say it. I'm your puppet. Man, you a trip, girl. This girl here is off the chain. All right, y'all. So listen, I'm gonna get out of here. Wise words has been that's right, Heather. It's a learning curve for us all. Appreciate it, Sam. This is going through life and doing stuff like this. This is not something that you come in, babe. This is not something that you do overnight. It's something that you grow to. It's something that you grow to. And so with our mistakes, it comes experience and learning. So you can come over here, babe. So, Christianity is a life of progress, but we shouldn't be the same place we were yesterday. Yes, we may have treated our enemies bad 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but we shouldn't be treating our enemies the same way today as we did yesterday or 5 years ago. It's a growing process, and it's like Heather says, it's a learning curve, and we live this life and we learn as we go, and we learn through mistakes, and mistakes are good because they teach us. So, but anyway, y'all, I'm gonna get off here. We're gonna get ready to head out here after a while to go knock some doors. Y'all keep us in your prayers as we go. Try to have prayer with people in our communities, and Lord willing, we'll be back with you. Won't be back tomorrow morning at 9 because I gotta have surgery on my right hand. So,
hey, Grandma.
Mama, listen here. Mama, I'm trying to do a video here. You ain't got time to talk to your grandchildren. You can call your grandchildren on the phone. So I have surgery on my wrist tomorrow, so I won't be back tomorrow morning. And I may not, I'm probably not going to do the class either to Friday morning because I'll probably be drugged up. So, but Lord willing, I may be able to do some videos or something this weekend. But we'll see. Anyway, we're going to get off of here. Peace out. And girls, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Roll Tide. Y'all have a good day.